Today's session, March 19th, 2025, Data-Driven AAC Program, a roadmap for success. Today we have Melissa Taylor Bowen and Claire Cunningham, both of whom work with me at the Douglas Education Service District. So I'm super excited to be able to welcome you guys. Yay! In my own backyard. And I am going to stop sharing and turn the show over to you.
Thank you, Chandra, and thank you, Deb. It really is a privilege to be able to connect with all of you this morning. I am low on voice today, which is kind of fun as a speech language pathologist. But I completely, have tons of respect and excitement to have Claire present what we have been working on as far as processes for students who we want to consider AAC systems for. One of the things that makes our setting exciting is the word that I will use. Challenging has been other words that we have used, is that we have 13 school districts that we cover at the Douglas CSD, multiple schools within those districts, and speech language pathologists that are in a wide range of experience, motivation, and technology fear ranges, serving children in those schools. And so we really understood a few years ago that we needed to have a way that was a hub and a resource center and a process that was based on current research and that really looked at children as individuals in order to explore ways that they could access AAC. And so I'm just so privileged to work with these ladies, and I'm going to turn it over to Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire, and so this is just our process that we use at the Douglas ESD. We started this about 8 years ago and have been changing it, morphing it kind of ever since, and we're still morphing it. But the process started out as one that we needed to be legal and to be accessible and to be timely. And so we've come up with our process, and it's exciting to hear about other processes too. And so if anybody has anything that they'd like to chime in with regarding their process, we'd love to hear that. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and hopefully this all works in computer land over here.
Yes, we had a lovely time, as you guys all know, trying to get the presentation mode working with that little Zoom bar in the way.
Okay, hopefully everybody sees the screen. Are we good, Chandra?
It looks good.
Okay. So so we're documenting the AAC process here, and because we've found a process that seems to work for us in our 13 districts with all the problems that come with that. But what we found was it's really different in different parts of the state because of funding, because of who our children are, because of restrictions in districts, because of the way districts want to do things. All those things come into play when we are looking at the process of getting someone through to actually receiving an AAC system. And so we start with the first step in the process, which is the permission to screen. So when we look at the permission to screen, Chandra, hold on here. Choosing not to move forward. going to stop sharing for a minute, okay? And we'll try to figure this out.
Don't we all love technology?
We always love technology.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. We love it. Hmm.
But yeah, as they were saying, Douglas County is massive. We have so many schools, and the square footage or the square miles of the county itself are just huge. I think there's only one or two counties that are bigger than ours. And they're even more rural than we are, I think.
Very more rural. Good way to say it. Very more rural.
Very rural, yes.
Okay, I think to make this work, you guys, I'm going to just do it in presenter. I'm not going to do it in presenter view, but you'll see the slides on my view. I think that might be easier without less trouble.
Whatever works for you.
You have that fun eye echo bar that doesn't want to work very well here. Okay. Can you all see that yet?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. I'll try again here.
So how many of you guys have a process in place for determining AAC? And is that a school or a district by district? Is it led by your ESD? How does that work? Just go ahead and put that in the chat. We definitely want to be collaborating to find out what works.
Find out what works is really important.
I can see your slide.
Yay. Okay. So our first step in the process is always of any SPED process is always a permission to screen. And as you know, in the SPED process, moving through the steps legally is really a big deal because when we're looking at SPED law, many suits are brought against the process rather than the content. So we wanted to make sure the process was definitely legal. So our first process is permission to screen, and you'll see it here. And it's pretty simple, straightforward. Asking the parent or the guardian, do we have the permission to screen for AAC? Which of course we have to do when we're doing anything different with one child than other children in the classroom. So this has been pretty successful, considering that many of our students or many of our parents can't read themselves. And so we have a process for getting to everyone. And the process is that we'll get the information to you however you would like to receive it. So sometimes that means that it's sent electronically if the parent can take it electronically. Many of our parents can't. If it needs to be read to them in person and signed in person, we do that. If it needs to go back home in the backpack to get home and come back by backpack, we do that. If we can get it to them by snail mail, we do that. So all of those ways of procuring that information, anyone is good. We just need to get it so that we can move forward. So once we have permission to screen from the parent or the guardian, we move to a questionnaire for the parent. And this gives us the initial information we need about a student from the parent's viewpoint to gather all of the attributes of the child that we may not know at school, along with all the medical history that we need to know about in considering making these choices, and all of the motivators that mom and dad may know about at home that we may not know about in the school environment. The parent questionnaire is about 3 pages long, and we can again send it in any of those ways to make sure the information comes back. Here at Douglas, we have we've made the pledge that if we cannot get a parent questionnaire back, then we do not move forward with the AAC assessment. And the reason is that if the parent isn't involved or the guardian isn't involved, then it becomes a school-only process, and which could be challenged legally. And all of these forms, if you'd like copies of them, we can get them to you. We're constantly in a revision process, so and we'll be doing that again this next year. So once we have the permission to screen in for the student and the questionnaire from the parent, then we have the move ahead sign, the sign that says, okay, we can move ahead now to actually starting the process. And the process for actually procuring AAC begins with having the information from the SLP and the teacher and the assistants who work with the student. And so we have developed questionnaires for all those instructional people that we need to have the information from, because they all have a little bit of a different viewpoint and different information that comes in about the student, all very valuable in how we're looking at serving the child as a whole, and then actually looking at how are we going to feature match a system to actually benefit this child. So the questionnaires are invaluable. And when we come to the questionnaires, they're sent to our staff through Adobe Sign. And we find that that's a quick and easy process to get it legally signed and back to us quickly. We used to do it by paper and it took forever, and they got lost and torn and all that stuff that paper does. And so so the Adobe Sign process for our staff works well. I said that we also use a questionnaire for assistance, and we have different questionnaires for the teacher, for the SLP, and for the assistants, because they all do different things with the child at different times. And when the child has multiple assistants in a classroom, we like to get a view from all of them. And oftentimes, the assistant's viewpoint on what the child likes and how the child accesses their toys and their other favorites in the room really helps us have a perspective on what they're going to like in a system. And so it's definitely a meshing of all the information from all the people that work with the child. The information that we get has to use, we have to have it available in all these ways: backpack home, snail mail home, paper, and electronic documentation, to actually move the process along as fast as possible. Usually in our process, or in an AAC trial, we'll have usually a combination of these things. It's not all backpack home. It's not always all snail mail home. A combination seems to work really well to get to everybody.
It looks like we have a question here. Francisco is asking if you have a documented consent from parent to evaluate, but the questionnaire is not completed by the parent. Do you don't continue with the process? Do you wait for that questionnaire, or do you continue?
Yeah, so we have the permission to screen signed by the parent. So we have that first. We don't do anything until we get that. And then, yes, we have a questionnaire for the parent. And if the parent doesn't send back the questionnaire, if we can't get it through any of our ways, we do not move on with the process. And the reason is the parent has to be involved and has to know about this um, legally and also functionally for the student.
So parent buy-in is key, is what I'm hearing, right?
Parent buy-in's key, guardian buy-in's key. And a lot of times, even the parent and the guardian or the guardian will choose not to use it at home, but they know it's being used at school. And that in itself is the can actually be enough for the student, even though they're not using it at home, and we would prefer that they were. But just knowing that the parent is okay with that, the fact that we're using it at school is what we need to have.
We have some really great comments in this chat, and I really want to get them on the recording here, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah.
I read these for just a second. So Alyssa here says that they use a modified systems first approach in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
And Deborah is saying that their SLPs collaborate on the process, but they're still working on it. And then Alyssa says that anyone can be referred. They use the SET process to include all stakeholders and do some feature matching. SET process is amazing. And Francisco says they have 2 great SLPs. I hope they're on here watching this. As well as 2 SLPAs and a program associate who manage the process at their school district in collaboration with each school's SLP. And then Joy says that it's led by their specialists, their SLP or autism consultants, I imagine, reaches out to AT-TBI liaison. And she's curious about more of the specifics of the processes. And Alyssa says we do not require data to prove that anyone needs AAC because of the unique nature of how long modeling without expectation is needed to actually implement. We do feel like 4 to 6 week trials give them enough information. They're trying to remove all barriers to access and focus instead on implementation of best practices. Yay, that's wonderful. And then, let's see. We had our question, and then Melissa responded to Alyssa that we completely agree and find that this is a discussion with school staff as well as some parents. We believe anyone is a candidate and has a fundamental right to access language via a robust system. The system trials data does not have a time limit when investigating the best options, but we do want to be efficient. The goal is to also have quality information to help with alternative funding. And they agree. It's a balance to collect information needed to play the game for medical model funding. That unfortunately that's what I've heard over and over again. And then there's a comment about trying to make sure that SLPs and case managers are not gatekeepers, blocking or stopping kids from getting AAC. And then Alyssa has put a link here in the chat for an article about SLPs as AAC gatekeepers. So, all right. Gosh, thank you guys. This has been probably the most collaborative Echo Voices ever, and we're only 20 minutes in. I love this. All right, I'm going to give it back to you.
I love all those comments. And I really had a really hard time on this. I talked to Chandra about this, about keeping it today to the process, because it brings in all those other great comments that you guys have. And that's why this is just our process here at the ESD, but I agree with every one of those comments. And we could go into them and then we'd be here for hours. Anyway, so I'm going to continue with our process, and love hearing about all yours. I'd love to hear more about all of yours. And anyway, so legal and moving forward, is that what we say here at the SD? Legal and moving forward. So next once we have all the information in from the questionnaires and the parent, then we move to a one-page referral. And what this is the SLP takes all of that information from the questionnaires and she puts it into a one-page referral about why this child really deserves and needs to have an AAC system. And we do it this way mainly because we have schools that where funding is very, very difficult. And so when we have a referral, we have the SLP sign it, we have the teacher sign it up at the top, and we then have a school administrator sign it. And when the school administrator signs it, they know that they're going to be paying for an AAC system for the student. And so having a one-page referral that is clear, that doesn't have a lot of legalese or speechies in it, that the administrators can understand, we found has been a huge plus in getting it signed and done. And that way, school administration knows what's coming, and they're good with it. We also use Adobe Sign to sign the referral. And what we found in the past is that, like with the questionnaires, that if you send something around to be signed, if you send it around paper, it's going to take at least 3 weeks. And so we use Adobe Sign for this too. So it goes out electronically. It goes to the SLP first, who signs it and sends it on to the teacher, who then signs it and sends it on to the administrator. And the goal is to have this done and signed in 1 day. And we meet that most of the time, unless we lose the Adobe Sign in our email. You could also use DocuSign. I think they're equally as legal, but ours happens to be Adobe Sign. So it's signed quickly, and we can, once the referral is signed, we can start actually handing the student a device and start trialing different systems. No SLP gatekeeper. So once we have the referral signed and we have the information from the questionnaires all combined into the aspects of that might help us choose a system, then we can start planning for the system. And when the SLP is looking at all of this, they take in not only all the questionnaires information, parents' information, all the assistants' information, but also they're looking at any kind of assessment they've been able to do with the child. And many times for nonverbal ones, that happens through the communication matrix. But any other measurements that the teacher has on the child or has used with the child, and any other specialists that have information we want to hear about from OTs and PTs. All of those come together into combining that information to be able to start choosing the best system for the child. And when we say best, we mean best now. Within a 3-year period, it'll be looked at again at the 3-year reeval. And so it's for looking at it, what's working now, what could work now, and in the next 3 years. So when we're looking at choosing a system, got all the information in, and we have information possible from the communication matrix, maybe the reception one-word vocabulary tests, any other um, anecdotal information we have that we can gather, all goes into what works best for choosing a system, because we need to find out what the child's access method is going to be. Is it going to be a touch access? We have one doing toe access right now, which is super cool. And the behaviors that we have for kiddos, we have one kiddo who uses his hand like this, and he wants to use something with his wrist. So, and he likes to hit things, and we found that he's very accurate at hitting things when you give him that access method. It's not seen as just some hitting somebody else for the a behavior. We found that it's actually his access method, which is great. And then likes and dislikes. We have one kiddo who will only grab the tennis ball with the pointer access method on it, and they want that one all the time. So that's their particular like for accessing their system. We find that for a lot of the nonverbal kiddos, they're falling into the unconventional and conventional steps on the communication matrix, and that helps us to look at what might best work for them. When we're looking at systems, we have a limited amount here at the ESD, probably more than some, less than others, but here's our current list right now. And we start from the most motor planned app down to the socially the social app of Talk Suite. And we identify, like someone said, we try to identify the child's levels and what's going to work best for them through the feature match process, which is wonderful. And we look at, based on their motor planning and at what level they would be at for not only accessing, but looking at receptively how they're going to respond to pictures, what size access screen they can use, all of those feature matching items that we need to identify what's going to work for the child, and feature matching as the set process through the set process, and other feature matching processes that would be a whole day. We could spend a whole day on feature matching and would love that. But that's how we try to do it here, and so that we feature match the best we can with the apps that we have, with the systems that we have, to be able to move forward as quickly as possible to get something going quickly into the child's hands is what we want to see.
So Joy has a question. She's the TBI liaison in her area, and she only works with students on an IEP. And she's asking if you include students on a 504 plan. Do they also get consideration or need to be a student with modifications to their education?
No. Yeah, no. We have several right now that are 504 for dyslexia or dyslexic type. And so those are on 504s. And so they can go into this process maybe a little bit shortened because we were looking at speech to text, text to speech, some of those systems. And so, yeah, 504 definitely.
To piggyback on that question and just clarify, because I don't know right now, Claire, if we have any students that have been referred to us that are not being served by an SLP.
Yes, we have one that's been referred to us that's not being served by an SLP on a 504.
Okay. Thanks.
The great question, though.
Melissa mentioned in the chat, OTAP does have several more of those AAC apps, and we send those out on iPads. And I noticed you have that list, and I just wanted to mention really quick that LAMP, their little icons changing, just so you know. And I might share that later with you guys, I'm thinking of, I get a lot of AAC news over the course of 2 weeks, and I think I might add a little, like, here's the AAC news that I've heard of, and that might be helpful to you guys.
Yes, yes. For the same reason, TalkSuite just updated theirs too,
and Talk to Me Technology and SmartBox have
merged,
combined. So yes, I think I might add that little bit to our Echo Voices.
Yeah, and we'd appreciate that, because like we found out yesterday, when SmartBox combined, it changed our access for getting into the grid app. So those are important little tidbits. We'd appreciate that, Chandra. Thank you. So when we're looking at a system here, we have a couple of different button sizes and a number of buttons to access. These are systems right now we're actually using with children. I mean, these sizes are actually, we're using them right now. And we set up the system according to the child's language levels. The SLP directs that. Anywhere from 4 to 80 grids is what we have right now that we're actually using right now. And of course, any access method that we can somehow actually procure to get the child access to touching it is what we'll do. And the one with toes is really interesting right now. We're having a lot of fun with that. And the child is having a lot of fun with that too. After the SLP has gathered the information, looked at it all, and decided, okay, we're going to start here. Then we train, we go in, the SLP uses the system with the student for about a week, a couple of sessions probably, and then we start training staff. Because the staff have more time, obviously, with the student than anybody at school anyway. And they need to know how we're looking at using this with this child, as well as knowing what to do and what not to do. And after watching this for a few years and watching the mistakes that happen, we've kind of boiled it down to a simple system of helping the assistants learn the basics of it so they're not overwhelmed, but yet they can use it and be models for their students. Everyone, that we want everyone to feel good about it, not overwhelmed and not depleted by trying to figure out a system. So once we have a system, the first system, we begin taking data pretty quickly. We have a simple process for taking data, and we don't try to overwhelm people with it. Often it's the data is relegated to the SLP and the SLPA. Although if there is an assistant that feels they want to take data, we're more than welcome to show them how to do that. And but the data drives how they're using the system and how we choose the system. And the data helps us make those decisions more confidently. And when somebody questions us, then we can actually show them the data and say, here's the data, and this is what the data is telling us. It's also, we wrap that data up in a report too, so that's the data becomes part of that.
And Claire, I have a quick question, and I
Yeah.
asked this question because I've asked it of you before. How many points of data do you try to get? Like, what's your number?
Well, we found, and this is going to sound, some people say it's high, some people say it's low, but we found that it seems to work. But if you're looking at this data sheet here, this data sheet holds 20 words. And so we ask for 10 pages per app of data. It's not hard to get. It goes very quickly. And that would be about 200 words. So we have 200 words of having been modeled to the child on a system, which gives us 200 data tracking points on that system. Did that answer your
Thank you.
question? I hope for
And
everybody else
they would
too.
like to know if
Yes.
you're going to share these forms.
I can share whatever, anything on these, anything you want, I'll share. I'm happy to share. Mhm. We'll go through the form a little bit though too to see what's on it. There are lots of different data tracking forms, and we're kind of in the process of updating this one too. It's everybody likes to do data differently, and that's fine. It's whatever works for you. This is just how we do it. So there it is, Chandra. You were a slide ahead, but 200 modeled words is what we look for um, per app. And we've had this go as fast as 2 to 3 days, getting that data that quickly. And sometimes it goes, 2 months, depending on the child's attendance and holidays and all that. But we want 200 to give an adequate visual and auditory representation of the model words to the child. So when we're looking at the data sheet, we're looking at touching a word, counting that touching a word on the AAC system, um, and how many times we touch that particular word as models. So, and then we're looking at the student response to that model. So when we're talking about a model, we're talking about the word on the left-hand side of that column. And then we're talking about how was the word used in the 6 communicative functions. So there are different versions of the 6 communicative functions too. Ours happens to be on our data sheet. The 6 functions of commenting, requesting, teasing, protesting, and questioning. And we on the data sheet, we circle one of those each time we have a model of a word, so that we know that we can use, because we can use a word as a comment. We can also use that same word in teasing, and we might also use that same word in questioning. So making sure we have a variety across the 6 communicative functions is important too. And so when we're looking at that data, if we have words on one sheet that have only been used, the whole sheet's only commenting, then we're going to have to take some more data and make sure that we're getting more context of the word used in requesting, in protesting, and in questioning. So as we're taking data, we're also taking note of the specific interactions that show intention, new interactions that the child might be doing in the session, facial expressions of the child, behaviors that the child's exhibiting, and sequences of how they're touching the application, or sequences of how they're moving the iPad around. And any kind of motivators that we know about the child and in using the system. So we had one student who would only use orange systems. She would not use green systems. And so when we were changing to the second trial system, we happened to put a green case on it, and she would not use the iPad. So once we put an orange case back on that one, she started going through the second app. So knowing those things helps to guide the direction, and you can probably guess at the end of the trial what kind of a case we put on her final iPad.
That's funny because that is one of the questions that I ask people. Do you have a color preference of case when I send out an iPad?
I think to the majority of kids, it doesn't seem to matter, but there, yeah, every now and again you get one of those. So here on the data sheet too, we're marking for the data sheet. We're marking behavior, what behavior was that day, what's the task stamina, and what's the joint attention that we're getting from those. And a lot of times we start at ones with all of these with these kids. We started, oh, behavior was awful. He wouldn't even pay attention to it. There's no joint attention. And so what we like to see in that is that these numbers come up to 4s and 5s by the third trial, that we're actually getting some kind of interaction with the child, and that gives us the information that yes, the child is attending to this and responding. The data from the modeling guides choosing the second system. So if we're not having success with the first system, we're looking at why, and then we're making those choices and moving to the next step of the second system, doing the same thing with the second system, looking at that, boiling down the information, moving into the third system. And we're looking at it up here on the data sheet. We end up conglomerating all that information into how many models was given on a particular system, how many gesture touches. The gesture touches, when we go to touch the button, instead of touching it, we point to it. And if the student touches it, then that's a gesture touch. So we're counting those because the student's paying attention to your finger. Then we have independent touches, when the student actually touches the button independently. And then oftentimes what we see with these is after independently accessing it, after an amount of time, they'll actually verbally say the word, which is our wonderful goal where we cheer and clap, because that's awesome when that happens. So we gather all that information, all those numbers together from those data boxes. We calculate all the models, and then we take that data and analyze it. We take all the anecdotal evidence and put that all together, and we choose then an appropriate system that seems to work for the student. Generally, we're looking at 3 system trials, but we've had 2 systems where we found this, on the second system, that was it. It seemed to work so well that we didn't need to go to a third system. And then, but we tried at least trial 2 at 3, and sometimes we even need to go to 4 systems. But that's pretty rare. I think we've only done that twice. So the data that we gather and the information that we gather seems to work in finding something that will work for the child within 3 trials of systems. We're coming down to time here, and we're almost at the end. So at the end, we take all that data and we plug it into a report. And the report made and signed by the SLP delineates the steps in the AAC process and the outcomes at each stage with the data and the supporting choice of the final AAC system. And we found that in funding, we have to have these reports, that without the report, we can't get it funded. And so I'm not sure when somebody reads a report at the insurance company level, whether they actually read it or not, or they just look at the SLP signature on the end. I'm hoping that they read it, but we found that this is what works to get the systems in the kids' hands, funded through insurance. And I know that other fundings through other organizations do it. The funding system is different. For us, we found that submitting this to insurance works, and that we've actually had two medical providers come to us and say, hey, can we have your report? Because we would like to have that in our medical file too. For in service to the child. And I don't know what everybody else is experiencing, but this year with the Oregon Health Plan, it's been very, very hard to get systems funded. And so we're looking at that, trying to figure out, okay, can we do anything different to make that continue to happen? Also with the report and in funding, when we a couple of times people have taken the report and gotten funding from other sources. So we have one other source down here that we use regularly. And there are others funding mechanisms like the Lions Club that can also be used, and the report can be given to anybody that's funding a system. And there's been other grants I know that have been written for iPad AAC systems for students, and the reports have been included in the grant. So the report really is the final documentation to open that door to funding a home system. What we find with school districts is that one school district has said, look, we're not going to give this child a system unless you have a report. If you have a report, then we'll give the student their own system and for school use. So for two of our districts, they require the report. And for one district, they don't require the report, but they want to see the data. But we just we have taken I guess the stance that if we're going through trials, we're going to write a report so that at the end of this, the SLP is really done. She's done, and she doesn't have to further be bothered with any more documentation that this child needs and deserves to have AAC.
Had a comment in here that we have a range of SLP experience and lots of new information that, as we mentioned previously, that's always coming in. And so as part of their process, internally, they hold weekly meetings and have the SLPs review the process, review current research, AAC topics, and hold Q&A sessions. And I think that's really important to make sure you guys hear. And for those who are watching this later, for sure, that is an important part of the process, is making sure that all the staff comes together and gets that information together.
We also have a weekly session for AAC, and it focuses on whatever it needs to focus on that particular session. So sometimes that's data, sometimes that's report writing, sometimes that's questions about the process, about difficult kids, sometimes that goes into the idiosyncrasies of the apps and what to do about problems that occur. Been very helpful in supporting the SLPs and the assistants out there delivering the service. Definitely 100%. Keeping up with what's out there and what's working, what's practical, what the trends are and moving to is really important.
There were having some comments in the chat about whether or not districts provide or schools provide AAC AAC systems that go home?
So here at Douglas, we have one school district that will allow their system to go home. And that that's an individual district decision, which is why we work with parents to try to get a home system, because our biggest district doesn't allow that. And so I would say that the one district that has allowed those iPads to go home, it's not been a great outcome. They've lost, I think, about half of their iPads when they allow them to go home. So that's the district's choice, and we'll support whatever the district chooses. But that's why we've put into place the I guess the information for the parents and insurance to try to help them get through that process so that they can actually get a home system. And I would say that's the way the majority of our parents get systems, is through insurance. But if you had a school that sent them home, that would probably be the process for the school to determine how they're going to either get that system back, or um, the other problem that comes up with home systems is the updating of the app. When those updates need to happen, that often is a problem for parents at home with a home system.
I I would like to ask Alyssa, would you mind unmuting and just saying what you wrote in the chat here about the myths and facts?
Yes, hi. I was able to, once that Myths and Facts document came out in January 2024, I was able to bring that to our admin and our IT department and all get together in one room. And it turned out that there wasn't a whole lot of actual opinions about devices going back. There was just talk of like, oh, this is how we do things here. And when I brought that fact with that document to them, it was, oh, I don't, IT's perspective was like, oh, we don't actually have a problem. Chromebooks go back and forth with the students. And during COVID, the iPads and all the devices were one-to-one. I don't see why this would be any different. And so I was able to get actual confirmation that we could make sure the devices are going home with the students over the not just the evenings, but also during summer breaks. And I've been working with IT as well on an management system, an MDM management system for our iPads and our tablets on actual auto updating. There have been several iPad issues though recently that have been causing issues. But generally, app updates, moving around of apps on devices is all managed by IT and the MDM, the mobile data managing system.
We also use that here, and that's a whole different show. So I didn't go into it, but that's a whole different show. But we use the MDM system here too, and we work with IT closely. It works quite well for us. But I totally agree with you about it went home during COVID. Why can't it go home now? And but that's one of those bugs that we need to work on to get worked out, because the reality is that so many of them, even if they have insurance and they have the means to get it funded at home, they just don't do it. And they end up with core boards. We always send core boards home, core boards, but of course, that's not a very good substitute for the talking app. Wonderful information. Yeah, that brings up about the material for about 9 more shows.
It really does.
It does.
And Francisco, yes, we here at the ESD use JAMP as well. And so I can push and pull apps as needed from the iPads that I send out from the loan library for whatever trials, if they want to do one at a time or whatnot. And that frankly makes it easier to keep that iPad locked if you're doing one app at a time.
I'd say actually that considering the amount of right now we have 69 kiddos that have gone through this process, and I'd say considering that it works very well. There's only been a few glitches with it, and I'd say that we're pretty happy with that part of it. I didn't put my email on here. I should have put my email on here, but I'm happy to get anybody forms or copies of whatever anybody wants. And Chandra's got my email. And we would like to see anything that you guys would like to share it too, because anything that we can make the process easier for anybody and any kiddo that we can help, we would love to. So thank you for being here. Thanks for chiming in, and we appreciate your input.
I put a link in the chat for the AT myths and facts if anybody here is not already familiar with it. It goes straight to the PDF that you can download and take to your IT department if you want. And again, we will get all of the slides and whatever forms you guys want in the Google Drive and in the archives and in the iEcho, and so you guys will be able to find it any place you want. But right now, I want to hear your questions, because I know there's got to be a ton of questions still. I know that we've touched on little parts and pieces of the process, but unmute, ask your questions. Let's collaborate. That's what we're all about here. A lot of thank yous, guys. And yes, it is great information. Process is so important, especially when it comes to that legal part. And I know, Claire, you just touched on that briefly. But maybe you can tell them again kind of your motivation for that legal piece. Like, how is it that your process is helping so that we're not getting in trouble?
So having in looking at SPED law and about how case law actually is a determiner of how lawsuits occur. When I say determiner, not determiner, but is actually when you have that history of case law and why things have been brought to trial or to mediation. When you look at that, and it's often based on the process. So it's not so much that usually when that happens, somebody's very unhappy with the service, and rather than try to mediate better service, they'll often make a complaint against the process. And the process, if there isn't a step-by-step process, the process then could lead you into a problem that doesn't have documentation. And so when you have a process that's documented, you're going to be able to answer all the questions without being open to holes that might lead into that process happening. And this was built on one process that happened with that we saw and thought, wow, we really need to make sure that our process is solid, so that if anybody challenged why we were doing it any step, that it could be explained and documented. And it makes it safer for everybody to move forward with and clearer, and helps them make decisions faster, and hopefully never get into that territory of lawsuits with an AAC system again, and hope that none of you do either, because obviously it's a positive thing, and we want that to happen and be able to happen for anybody who needs it.
Thank you for that. Another question, I know that as part of the AAC process, there is supposed to be some training for families. How do you guys approach that?
So we do it really but we've done, well, over the years, we have an ECSE, an early childhood special education too, that is starting to provide AAC more frequently. And so we've had between that, the younger set, and then our school age set, we have provided parent education at their request. And we have the early childhood has had actual trainings for parents set up in meetings. And that was kind of hit or miss for them. And so they have kind of gone to the system that we have, which is parent request. If a parent requests it, we let them know at the beginning that their questionnaire that it's available if the parent would like training. And but it's amazing that like more of them don't actually take us up on it, and we wish that they did. And so we were actually talking about that in our last meeting about how are we going to engage parents more, because obviously the child's at home more than he's at school, and if they're going to be more successful with it, then we really need to have someone using it at home too. So I'd love to hear what other people are doing with parent trainings, because we find that the parents that want it request it, and we're happy to give it and provide it. And we'd like to get it to more parents.
So, how do you guys out there deal with parent training? Do you find that there's a lot of barriers to that, or that families are not interested, not engaged, like, or do you have a good program? I know that we had a training from Kelly Key some time ago, and she seemed to have a pretty robust program that involved parents. If I remember, and it was a while ago, but if I remember correctly, it included some like all school parent meetings at the beginning of the school year. And then she had a ton of resources on how she communicated with parents back and forth. It was like fire hose information. It was like so much. But there were a ton of resources in there. If you guys need that, it's on YouTube, and all the resources, of course, are in the Google Drive. So Alyssa says that she has the exact same issues. They offer training and no one responds, but all the parents report that they never received training. Yeah, well, and that's true, right? They didn't receive the training, but to no fault of you guys. Yes, she involved the parent training, yeah, in the set process. And I think that is where you guys are starting, Claire and Melissa, requiring that questionnaire. I mean, yes, the permission, but that questionnaire, because the parent buy-in really is key. I know that I am a parent of an adult autistic child, and when she was in school, they did communicate with me a lot, and I know that the things that they were doing in school would not have been as effective if I didn't implement them at home. So yeah, a ton of resources. Does anybody else have any comments about their interactions with parents? Does anybody have anything that's working? Because that would be, we want to celebrate some wins, right? Who's
I
got a
didn't do
win for
this.
us? Diane.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't do this, but some members of our team did this one year and we recorded it. So they did like an AAC 101, session 1, 2, and 3, um, with the parents virtually. And then we had a couple of nights that we set up different stations at the preschool, and we had the parents come in with their child, and we kind of showed them how we would interact in bubbles and doing, and I mean, it was a good turnout. I helped with that night, and I still use the videos that they made. If parents and I can't connect, I'll at least share those videos with them to give them an AC overview. So that was one of the ways that kind of worked for us a little bit.
That's great. And the virtual thing, I know really being in person is the best for trainings, but we're all so busy, you know? And so those virtual offerings really are probably critical to getting them to just show up. Claire, do you guys offer any sort of virtual option for training for parents?
Yes. So when it's on the questionnaire, we ask, would you like training for your child? And that's interesting because I would think that everybody would say yes, but not everybody says yes. They actually say no on the questionnaire. No. So, which is, um, I'm not sure quite how to deal with that one, but yeah. So we offer it either way. We'll meet with you online. We'll meet and in person. Whatever way we can get it to you, we will strive to get it to you. It's that important. And I love her idea. ECSE does a similar thing where they bring in parents with their child. They have a night that they do with you're talking about bubbles and other activities, popcorn. But even they say that that's pretty low, not attended very well. But recording it makes it available and accessible, and that's a great way to do it.
Alyssa just shared that she has a PDF. She shared it in the chat, and I would very much like access to that. Yes, please.
Thank you. Microphone.
Oh. Thank you, Claire. Alyssa put in here that she created a PDF with links that goes out to all students that are referred, and she is happy to share, and I will get that into the handouts for this to be shared as well. And a very short intro videos. Okay. Videos are great. Linked on modeling and how to get started at home. Yes. And I mentioned earlier that we do have a ton of modeling trainings that we've done over the years, and you can find all of those in YouTube and in the archives as well. So thank you, Alyssa. I will grab that information and get it to everyone. Thank you, Claire, Melissa. Thank you guys so much. I really mean it when I say that this has been the most engaging Echo Voices all year. This is awesome. I'm
Let's
so
do
happy
more.
to have you guys from my own ESD and people that I get to see mostly every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.